Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening. So we're all here under WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. Hi, my name is Tina. I'm your divorce coach, specialist, and restorative family mediator, and this is Joe Huggins. And today we are graced with the very special Elyse Salley. Elyse has a long list of credentials that go behind her name. When I was reading this earlier, I was like, gosh, this is going to take me forever to get through. So Elyse holds an MA, a BCBA, an LBA, and is a Florida Supreme Court family mediator, guardian ad litem, collaborative practitioner, and licensed and board certified behavioral analysis. I find that to be very interesting. Elyse has dedicated over 10 years to serving children and families in Florida. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, a Master of Arts in exceptional education and applied behavioral analysis, and is currently pursuing a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution. Elyse founded Security Mediation on the principles of communication and healthy conflict resolution. In a community dominated by litigation, Serenity Mediation strives to provide alternatives that are better suited to children and families. Oh, that was a mouthful.
Sorry.
And she's still going.
So our show today is on children of narcissistic abuse. We'll be talking about what happens to children that are in the home where this abuse goes on, or maybe it's going on to the children. So I want to welcome you, Elyse. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
So on the way up, we had just talked beforehand, before we started the filming, about a trip that I just got back from Minnesota. On my way to Minnesota, I was listening to a book, and I always get his last name incorrect, by David Peltzer. And it was David's story, and he's got 3 books in the trilogy, and this was a second one. After I listened to A Child Called It, I really struggled with wanting to get into the second book because of all the abuse that took place in poor David's home. He was almost murdered by his own mother. And it had to do with her illness, but David was removed from that home. And then this was the second book where David talked about being in foster care and some of the stuff that went on with foster care. And David himself ended up in a very special place. But back when David went through this, he didn't have a guardian ad litem. There wasn't, in his state, there wasn't that type of they just pulled the child from the home, and they just plucked him and stuck him into foster care. So can you explain to us what a guardian ad litem is, Elyse?
Yes, of course. So a guardian ad litem is a neutral third person who comes on to a case, either a dependency case or a domestic relations case. And we come in as a third party. So we're actually assigned as a party. We can do filings and things like that. And we are going to all of the depositions and hearings, the trial, sometimes mediation if it's appropriate, everything to do with the case, to do with the child or children. And excuse me, my head isn't fully here yet because I'm getting over stomach virus.
Oh, awesome.
I'm still here though. I'm just not fully here. So yes, we're going into this home as this third party person, and we're there simply for the best interest of the child. I mean, so I was rereading the statutes tonight just to be fresh on it, but we are assigned to cases when there are allegations of abuse or neglect or any kind of maltreatment in the home. If the judge feels that it may be verified, but that doesn't mean that they have to wait for it to get to that point to assign a guardian ad litem. It can just be there are allegations by the other parent. They don't have to know if it's real or not. They can just say, let's get a guardian into the home. Or another common time I'll see it is if we have one parent here and one parent in another state, and the other parent in another state has obviously a lot of less control over that child. So they may be thinking, I need to do something to get more rights over my child, or, I haven't seen my child in years. And sometimes I'll get put on cases like that to try and figure out what kind of parenting plan could work for them.
Okay, so let me try to wrap my head around what you said in layman's terms. So are you then a representative of the child in the legal manner then?
Yes, I am. So in these cases, hearsay is waived. So that means that what I say is straight taken from the children's mouths. No one can say that it's hearsay. So yeah, I'm there just for the child.
Okay, and most of the time then the child is actually left in the home with the parents or parent, correct?
In domestic relations cases, yes. So these are going to be for divorce and paternity cases mainly. Sometimes also if they're reopening cases, we'll see that too. And that's all our family law court. So that's a totally different type of guardian ad litem than dependency cases. So dependency cases, at least in Florida, is when a child has been removed from their home or the parents or the guardians that they were with, and they're in state custody at the time. So dependency court is when the parents or the guardians are trying to get the custody of their child back. And that's a totally different thing. So those guardian ad litems are actually volunteers. And in our state, that is the Florida Guardian Ad Litem. I don't know if it's the center, but if you just type in Florida Guardian Ad Litem into any search engine, I mean, that's what comes up. And so if you think, oh, I want to do family law, and you search for pretty much anything in Florida, all you're going to get is, it doesn't tell you, but those are all dependency cases. Those are all volunteer-based positions. So it's different for family law.
Okay, so then what kind of cases do you often take as a guardian ad litem?
All of mine are either divorce or paternity. And paternity is essentially the same thing as divorce without the legal marriage. So the only thing missing from those cases is equitable distribution. They're not having to split their things when they split.
And yeah, they then just have the child that they're dealing with. And I dealt with one of those last year where they had never gotten married and they were trying to figure out the parenting plan. And you had mentioned just a little bit ago that parenting plan. So what part do you play in the parenting plan?
I take on, at least I know everyone's different and there aren't a lot of qualifications for what we do, but I take on a huge role of that as to where I pretty much write out a full parenting plan in my full report at the end. I will sometimes do interim reports if it's a lengthy case, just to get some work out there and to maybe say, these are the goals that I want this parent to achieve over the next 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever it may be. And then maybe I'll watch them and see their level of if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, or not what's supposed to be, but doing what I asked them to do to show that they want to be in the child's life. And then at the end, whether it's for trial or mediation, or if they're just going to settle, then I will have a full report. And that I usually do a full parenting plan, maybe not a full thing, but definitely a time sharing plan.
Okay, so as we go on, I know Joe's got a list he's been working on to talk to you about. There was abuse in his home. And so I know that there's some stuff that he wants to communicate about that. And then I've got some questions and stuff related to another case that would relate to yours. So what do you have that you want to kind of communicate with?
So I married a narcissist back then, my ex, we can call her Hilda. But she had like extreme punishments for the kids. And I was always between the kids and her. So I never wanted to, like, I'll just say, of course, I didn't want to abandon my kids with that. So I stuck out the marriage. That meant the most to me, just to be there for the kids. But the rule she had made absolutely no sense. If you were to make the craziest rules, like one of her rules was, and I have 6 kids, so that could add to even more chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're getting ready for school, and one kid wants to pack their own lunch. So in my eyes, it'd be like, fantastic, pack your lunch, you know. But her rule was, if you pack one lunch, you got to pack 5 more.
Mhm.
Well, the kids went to school without lunches daily, a lot. So I got called into the, I'll just say, principal's office, and him and I had a good rapport. And he's like, Joe, what's going on? And so, I tell him, and he's like, we're gonna have to switch this up. We need to do something different. So, and we did, but just rules like that were just blew my mind. It's like, if you want to pack your lunch, it's a punishment. So I never is that normal for a narcissist? Is that how they
She's
think?
not an expert in narcissism.
That's- I mean,
Abuse.
Taking care of the kids.
Abuse. Is that, I mean, anything to punish them, I guess, would be normal, right? For the,
that's such a hard question to answer what normal is. So let me tell you at least about my background in behavior analysis, because each of us uses what our background is. There are attorneys and psychologists and therapists. I think I'm the only behavior analyst that I know in Florida. There's one other I just met in another state. But my background is that I don't categorize into good or bad. I'm looking at people just behavior to behavior as it's occurring. So I don't even try to categorize people into diagnoses unless I absolutely have to. But I'm just looking at what is happening and not saying, is it good or bad? And then also in my field, we don't do punishment unless a person is having a problem behavior that's so severe that they're harming themselves, they're harming another person, or it's so socially inappropriate that they're being excluded from their peers. So punishment is not something that I say works ever. I had a professor that would always say something like, there's no bomb big enough to make peace. And I really like how she put that, because that's how I think about punishment. Punishment does not work for our everyday things that we run into. So I can't tell you if it's normal or not. A lot of people were raised based on punishment. And overall, our society is a very punishment-based society. We get fines and tickets, and we get in trouble for things. We don't pay something, we get our lights turned off or our water turned off. So we are a pretty punishment-based system. And I do feel that it is starting to change now, just as our generations are coming out and we're becoming more aware of it.
Yeah.
right. And
A huge answer to your little question.
and when I say normal, I'm not saying normal as in normal household. I meant normal as in someone that's not well in the head.
She's not a therapist.
Yeah,
so
right,
She can't
so-
answer.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable answering things like that, because I want to see everyone as someone whose behaviors can be changed. Everyone whose problem behaviors can be changed for the better. I don't want to just slap a label on anyone and say you are such and such.
Right. You
Means
probably don't
such and
like kind of-
such. Right. I mean, even when I had clients with
Sure. Right.
autism and OCD and whatever else, I would tell the families, I don't care about the label at all. These are the behaviors we're dealing with. This is how we're going to change them.
Right.
I get you. And it's I think a big liability too, to label somebody, even if you're a therapist.
Yeah.
Because our therapist,
Right.
I went through 17 years of counseling, so we went through
Yeah.
13 counselors. She'd
Oh
pick
my
them,
gosh.
pick them, groom them.
Right.
And they didn't put me through electrical shock therapy, so that we should pick a new one and just keep going. But even though she picked them, they understood her behavior pretty quick, and they didn't say she is a narcissist. they would read what a narcissist was and say, does this remind you of anybody?
Right.
And-
Or she exhibits narcissistic tendencies.
Exactly. Yep. Tendencies, behavior, that kind of stuff. So, and that's how they embrace that situation. So, yep.
Yeah. So I know when you guys were talking about my qualifications, the PhD that I'm doing, the conflict analysis and resolution, this was my last semester that I'm doing of that. I'm taking a pause on it to do another master's in social work. I know, it's just never ending. So I can get that licensure so I can then do social investigations in Florida under Florida statutes. So I'm really excited about that because that does incorporate the portion that you're talking about. I know I'm still going to have my same mindset on it, but I will have that ability to be able to diagnose.
And
So maybe come back to me in 3 years and see if I have a different answer, but I don't think that I will because it's sort of my philosophy.
yeah. So then in doing what you do, because I have dealt with guardian ad litems, and one of the children that had to have a guardian ad litem, and this was in the state of Colorado, he was abused by the mom's boyfriend to the point it broke both of his femur bones. And so they removed him and put him with a foster family. And eventually that foster family was given permission to adopt the child. But that whole time I would work with him. And of course, the guardian ad litem would come with him occasionally I was doing a little bit different work than what I do now. So I would work with the child and the foster mother to help the child to be able to accept and to heal in the legs and go through that. And so the guardian ad litem would always, be there just as his support system. So I love that. How often do you do stuff like that?
I do that a little less in domestic relations cases because they are with their families and typically they're not at risk of being removed from their families. So on any given standard, I will do one home visit in however many homes they have. And I will do a school visit or a daycare visit or wherever working, depending on how old they are. And then if necessary, I will also do drop-in visits where I just don't tell people that I'm coming so I can catch them off guard. Like I'm actually doing one of those on Thursday. So that will be fun, Thursday and Friday. So sometimes that happens too, but it's not a ton of FaceTime as it is in dependency cases.
Okay, then based on there was a situation, and I know he mentioned this in the last show that we did. He had a situation where he had a contractor that came in and recorded what he believed to be abuse going on in the home while he was working. And so had he turned that in Florida, had he turned this in and turned them into DHS or whatever it's called there in Florida for the Child Protective Services, how would that then come into your lap?
If it was an ongoing case of mine, I don't know if they would even know about me. Possibly they would. I would hope that at least one of the parents would tell them that I was on the case and that the investigator would get in contact with me. I do see DCF cases a lot. I mean, it's something that gets thrown around in family court all the time. I mean, it's used as a weapon as well as how it's supposed to be used. I mean, when it comes to DCF is an agency and they're going to do what they're going to do. So they're going to see if it qualifies as something for removal. I mean, they have all of these different plans that they follow and different consequences that they use of maybe they just get services or maybe they're removed for a certain amount of time or, well, maybe mom has to do such and such or dad has to do such and such. So it really depends if it gets to that point where DCF says, yes, we are going to open a case on this person. Because a lot of cases don't even get to the point where they open it if they determine that it's not something they're going to mess with.
Yeah, and I did talk with a bunch of the mediators that work in that and foster parents. And so in the case with this family, because there was 6 children and they removed, I know that in a lot of cases they try really hard to keep, at least they did in Colorado, to keep the siblings all together in the home. But when you have so many foster children that are out there and so few foster homes, how
Right.
does the state of Florida handle stuff like that?
I haven't heard how it's been going recently, but I actually went through that dependency training probably about 2 years ago, and it was so overloaded at the time that they had children who were staying in the offices. So I think we're having the same thing happening here, where there are more kids than there are spaces for them to be.
And that's what I hear. I hear that it's less than half of foster homes to take care of all these foster kids. And in some cases, they have more than 10 children. I talked with a foster mom over the weekend that had 10 kids in her home, including her own.
Wow.
Kids.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, just think about having to own a space that's large enough for that. You'd have to get really creative with your bed and your partitioning situation.
Right. I've heard that even some end up on the couch for short periods of time for a few weeks anyways, until they find him a bed or her a bed that they
Right.
can actually stay in.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I see come up a lot in allegations too, is parents will say the other parent doesn't have a sleeping space for them or doesn't have their own sleeping space for them. And I kind of have to say, like, well, there's no law about this, so I can't really do too much because I can't legally tell someone you can't have your child sharing a bedroom with your significant other's child.
Yeah, there's
Kind of like just have
yeah,
to feel a little bit, try and see the best in it. And that's when I try and have the parents work on communicating with one another and doing, I just lost what it's called. It's not the type of mediation that you do. It's a different type. It's where you talk about what you want to see happen. And then the other person talks about, it's like talking about your overall goals and seeing where your goals align.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's good. That's kind of what a parent coordinator kind of does a little bit, trying to make
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm getting that certification next month. I'm super excited about that too. I'm just nonstop with my stuff.
And so when you get all the certifications, what are you hoping to do with all of them, Elyse?
Well, as of today, I've been expanding the company. I recently, a month ago, took on an assistant. So she's been taking on all of the stuff, she's starting to run my life so I can just focus on what I really need to be doing. And I'm going to work on over the next, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, changing the name slowly, because I feel like Serenity mediation is kind of limiting. And people will ask me, oh, so you do mediation? Oh, are you a law firm that does mediation? And I feel like it kind of closes it in. So I got the DBA today for Serenity Family Solutions, because that's open and it's vague and it's going to incorporate even more services. So at some point I would like to get a physical space and kind of have it be a holistic team of myself and maybe an attorney and a paralegal, maybe a couple assistants, and then maybe a couple therapists or a divorce coach, to see what the best fitting team would be to help people through these situations.
Awesome. That sounds like an amazing thing. So I know that you have a whole list of things. So is there anything in there that can fit into what we're asking or talking about?
Well, what I did is I listed a lot of the extreme punishment stuff, like 8 hours in the corner for a kid.
Yeah, no, I mean,
That's insane.
I want to learn more about DCF because I know the rules, I'm sure, are different in every state. But if I were coming in on a case like that, I would probably make a report on that.
Sure, exactly. And I found this out later, like I'd go to work and then, I really tried my best to be the buffer, but there is so much scary stuff because I didn't want to lose my kids and then disperse the kids. And social services was called out, so they had a tab in it. So I think that slowed a lot of that behavior down, so the kids weren't screaming at the top of their lungs through the day and stuff. So, and then that's the recording I got from the contractor that, and it was shocking. So, and I could only listen to part of it.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you guys went through that. It's awful.
Right. Well, and thank God all the kids are grown and they're healthy minded, and I love them, they love me, life is good. So,
Yeah.
that's the
Important.
sixth part. But I sure wouldn't put anybody through that to go, if you want strong kids, do this to them.
Right.
They're strong kids and they're strong-willed, and they were not broken. And, thanks for that,
Right.
so.
Yeah, there's so much. And the book that I was referencing earlier, A Child Called It, and this one was about his life after he was removed from that abuse. And he was an exceptional one that got through the process. And I believe it was in California. And because I work in all the states and in other countries, I can tell you that all the states that I have guardian ad litem cases and things that I'm working with, they're all very similar rules that the DHS or whatever it's called in each state goes through to protect these kids. And I found that through the process, we lay people hear about how bad the foster care system is. We hear about this kid getting killed or whatever, raped or whatever in that foster care. But that is like what they said was less than 3% of the homes or the situations that ever took place that ended up negative. And a lot of those that were reported were not the parent themselves, but the fact that the child ended up in a place that they weren't supposed to be in the first place. And that's why the home got reported. So I'm sure that you as a guardian ad litem, especially when you're taking care of the kids that have been removed from the home, get to deal with some of that stuff as well.
I don't have any dependency cases. I don't do dependency cases.
Okay.
I think it's heart-wrenching. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of people do it. I saw the team that I was with when I went through the training for it, and it was mainly young professionals and people who were retired and very caring, very generous people. But I, as someone who has to work and support kids as a single mom, I can't volunteer at this point. I mean, I'm barely pulling it together.
Right. And it's difficult, period. And then you're many classes that.
Right.
Yeah. So in the case that I was referencing earlier, I know that, and this happened a lot where I used to live, and I lived in southern Colorado. And so when children were removed from the homes, most of the times they weren't necessarily removed from the family. They were put with the grandparents. And a lot of cases, the grandparents were raising. But in this one specific case, the grandmother actually has legal custody now. And the therapist, I finally helped them get the child into therapy. And the therapist must be an amazing therapist. She's figured out and bonded with this child very much to where the therapist is now taking basically a guardian ad litem role and helping the child express his information, because his parents were drug addicts and they haven't done one thing. They gave up custody of the child because they couldn't stop using fentanyl. So when the mom has died 3 times, and because they had the medication, I guess they're giving that out for free. They were able at home to give her the medication to bring her out from the actual death of the fentanyl. And so the baby himself ended up with fentanyl in his bloodstream. They found it when they did a hair analysis. So in understanding a little bit about, and I know you don't do these kinds of cases, but in understanding stuff like that, how would the state of Florida kind of work through a case like that?
If the child, so they willfully gave up their parental rights.
They sure did.
I mean, that's great. So, I mean, that they would leave it at that. They would have the child established with, usually they want to get someone who's a family member or a friend of the family. And then they will look like they have different tiers that they look for where they want to place children. And with family is first, and then friends are, I think, are second behind that. And then we go into different types of homes. So I feel like if grandma stepped in and she got those parental rights, then they wouldn't have anything to do with dependency at that point unless they were just giving services to kind of close the case out. So maybe a year, or I don't know, a certain time period of therapy. It sounds like she got exactly what would have happened in Florida.
Yeah. And like I said, from what I learned from state to state, they're all vary, especially when it comes to the foster care and removing children from homes and stuff. And, you know, the lay people, we always hear how DHS or whatever it's called in each state is so bad for the children. And again, there's only a small percentage that is not helping the child or children or the family as a whole. So with that said, I want us to move into kind of a little bit about the mediation process. I know the way that I'm trained, I'm in restorative, although when I'm doing a divorce mediation, our whole part is to help the separating family untie things in a way that they can co-parent and help the children, because that's the most important aspect of the marriage. So tell me a little bit about that aspect with you.
Sure. And it's narrative mediation. It just came to me. That's what I was talking about my brain being really slow today. Narrative mediation. So with mediations, I stick with the same thing that I do. I do divorce and paternity. And I will either do cases that are already open through the court system, or I will do pre-suit cases, which those are some of my favorite cases to do, because I'll have a couple that will come in and they'll say, we don't want to go to court. We don't have a court case open. We just want to get divorced, or we just want to figure out a parenting plan. And I'm like, great, that's like the perfect client to be, because they don't have to go through the entire process. And I'll tell them, yeah, absolutely. I can knock these out in 2 to 3 hours. Usually it's thousands and tens of thousands of dollars cheaper than litigation. And I just had a consultation for one today, or a scheduled consultation for one today. So I'm excited about those. But oftentimes, most of my work does come from attorneys. So I'm doing mediation where there are typically 2 attorneys, one for each parent or party. And sometimes there are kids involved and sometimes there aren't. So I'm going through, depending on if it's divorce or paternity, the entire parenting plan, and also if it's a divorce, then the equitable distribution. So I prefer to do joint mediations if no one asks beforehand saying that they don't want that, or if I say it in the beginning and they say absolutely not, I don't want that, I'll try and push just a little bit, because I feel like it is a quicker process and it can be more beneficial, because then you're able to see that body language that you wouldn't be able to see if you're in your own separate room with an attorney. And I feel like if you're in your own separate room with an attorney, that kind of is showing you and your attorney are a team, your former partner and their attorney are a team. So again, you're not on a team together. You're not really going to get too many places unless you have really good attorneys who want them to come to an agreement. But you can also have attorneys who just want to stonewall the entire process.
Yeah, that was part of our talk when I was in Minnesota at our conference, is that if we can keep the attorneys out of the mediation, not that we don't want our clients, we definitely want our clients to be legally protected. But when we get to mediation, a lawyer can slow things down, can cause more conflict. So where we're talking about adding in the coach, so the coach can support, but not just support the individual they're with, support the mediation process.
Yep.
So as mediator, the 2 that are mediating out are basically what we call in a fishbowl. They're doing the communication. I've done pre-mediation work with my client, and the other coach has done pre-mediation work with their client. And so once you would reach an impasse with the two of them and they're just stonewall, I'm not going to do this, then you could bring us in and we could give alternate ideas of things that might help the process move along.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to
That's
do.
great. That sounds great.
Yeah, right. And we're doing our best to keep it to where we can try to keep the attorneys out. I mean, even attorneys spoke, and they even said they don't want to be there because they feel that they're adding conflict to the resolution.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I will have a caucus, the separate room of just the attorneys, and ask them, like, come on, like, what are we doing here? What does your person actually want? There's no way that there's this much of a fight in this. And sometimes there is, though. Sometimes there is. I had a family that came twice, and the first time they both brought attorneys, and the second time neither of them brought attorneys. But still, they wouldn't do a joint session. So we didn't really get anywhere. But the first time we actually got somewhere where I was trying to do like you do, think outside of the box, like, what is any kind of partial agreement I can get them to? And the fact that they were both had so many allegations against the other one when it came to the kids. I said, well, then let's agree to get a guardian ad litem appointed. And we came, right, we came up with that as our partial agreement. And then for some reason it never happened. And then 4 months later, I heard back from them saying, it never happened. We don't know why. We're coming back. The attorneys aren't coming. But we do our best.
Right. They get the bill from their attorney and they know that wasn't a good thing. Yes. Right. And in the state of Colorado, I know that they have, like, for the life of me, I just lost the term that they use, but they're not a guardian ad litem, but they go into the home and they talk with the parents and a little bit of the children, more kind of view what's taking place. They don't really have a private conversation with the kids. And so these people can cause problems. And I don't think that they're causing the problem. I do believe the parent is causing the problem. So when I know that this person, and like I said, I keep forgetting what they're called, when they go in and they investigate the home and talk to the parent, I tell mine, don't offer up additional information. Answer their questions and don't throw your other person under the bus. Because when you throw your other person under the bus, then you're marked down as the bad guy. So,
yeah.
It's
a very nasty process.
Definitely. So as we come to the end of this, Elyse, I know we've kind of bounced all over the place, but it's partly because you have all of these things. I do want to ask before we get into the end here, as a person that's trained to watch people and to see different things with what they're doing, how do you use that in your work?
I use it. I think it is just such a part of me as a person that it's hard to separate between work and just being.
I understand.
I try to be really aware of people, and I think about why they may be doing the behaviors that they're doing. And if I can't get a solid answer that I'm good with, then I would ask. I would ask for clarification, and I would want to make sure that people at all times are comfortable. Is a huge thing for me. I mean, I had so much anxiety as a kid from a very controlling, both parents actually separately. And so my own comfort has become like such a ultimate goal in my life that I want other people to feel the same way. So I kind of do that by watching their behaviors, at least as best as I can.
Yeah. And I can see that, the therapist with this young boy with his grandma, that's how she therapies with him. She plays and watches behavior with the toys, right?
Yeah.
So as we go ahead and end this, what kind of information would you want our viewers to know?
I would want people to know that more people can be guardian ad litems than you would think. When I was rereading the statutes tonight, I could not find any specific criteria as to what would make someone a guardian ad litem. I do remember that when I took the training that it was marketed toward attorneys and mental health professionals, but in the statutes, there are not limitations as there are in social investigations and also with collaborative divorce. I know we didn't talk about that, but there are also not so many limitations in that. But yeah, I mean, look into it. I did a presentation a few months ago specific toward behavior analysis, behavior analysts going over all of these things. And over 200 people showed up because, you know, they're all flocking in saying, we can do something other than working with kids or other than working with developmental disabilities and mental health disorders. And I had so many requests afterwards, like, how do I get into this? And I'm saying, well, for guardian ad litem, you really don't have to do much. Just look at your state's certification processes and see if there's anything with statutes. So there's not a huge barricade, at least not at this point, to do something that helps the kids.
Yes, and anything that helps the kids. And I know that our topic was narcissistic abuse with children, you know, and the whole point was that is the term narcissist is a coin word that's being tossed into the ponds.
Yeah, that's a hot one right now.
Yes, it's just the coin word, right? But abuse of any kind is abuse. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like in the case with you working with them, sometimes things can be corrected and fixed to where the parents can realize, oh, this is not something I should be doing. So in that case, working with somebody like you is huge.
Right. I mean, I've had goals in guardian ad litem plans where I think I make very specific goals where I said, like, this parent needs to, or should, not that I can say needs to, but this parent should call the children at least 3 times per week for 3 consecutive months at an independence rate of 85% or higher. And very specific goals like that I can follow with data and graph out if I want to. So these people can make progress because I can see their baseline data of how they do without any kind of intervention. And then I can make goals for them and I can find interventions that would hopefully help them and hopefully they would follow so they can make progress with that.
Yeah, well, awesome. So is there any last minute advice you would give anybody watching?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I can tell you as a mediator to a mediator with Elyse here with us, that is the best that you can do. No matter how much conflict is there between you and your soon-to-be ex, going through mediation is the only chance you have to voice what you would like to see happen between you and your soon-to-be ex. If you decide that you can't mediate, then you are giving a judge all of the permission in the world to divide things up how that judge decides is best. And they try to keep the kids in mind, but that's usually a 50-50 custody. And sometimes dad can't take 50. And sometimes mom wants more. This is a time for you to communicate with each other. And if you can work with somebody or work with Elyse yourself there in Florida, that is what you want to do. I can tell you that if you are in, this is how I end always, if you are in a serious violent situation right here, right now, in the States, call 911. Get the police there, press charges. Do not drop those charges. This is your key to a safe place to sleep every night. If you are in the UK, it's 999, same thing. Press the charges, keep the charges, get out of the relationship. If you are dealing with domestic violence, please call a domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And I want to ask Elyse to please give us your contact information so anybody could reach you.
Absolutely. So our number is 407-377-7147, and the website is serenitymediationfl, like Florida.com.
Very
and
good.
I'd be happy to, if anyone wants to contact me, I'd be happy to send over materials and other information too.
Yes, about the guardian ad litem. Remember what she just said. So And Elyse is in Florida, just like she said, so she works in the cases in Florida. But the guardian ad litem, if you're in Florida, she definitely can point you in the right direction there. If you're trying to reach myself or Joe, you can reach us on my email at Coach Tina Lynn, that's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. And my website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. And Elyse, thank you so much. This was so enlightening.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thank you very much. And I hope that we'll have you on again. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.